Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Happy New Year. It is January 25th as I'm recording this. So I think we're past the point of saying Happy New Year to people, but I'm still saying it now. And it certainly feels like winter weather because we got snow in Austin last night. So nobody is going anywhere today. Everything has been canceled. Everybody needs to stay home because we got, an inch and a half of snow that is now iced over and nobody knows how to drive in the snow. So I'm stuck inside and I've been wanting to film this video since Christmas, but life has been very chaotic. The day after Christmas is when we toured this townhouse that we are now living in and ended up applying for it, signing the lease. And then I was sick for the entire week after Christmas, like up until I went back to work. And it's always crazy going back after the holidays. And then we had to pack and get ready to move, and then we moved. So it's now literally 1 month after Christmas. It's the 25th of January and I'm filming this, but better late than never. So I'm here today to show you guys all the books that I was gifted for Christmas, and I'm really excited about it because a lot of these books have been on my TBR for a little while. A lot of them I'm really excited to read. And then I figured in the spirit of the new year, at the end of this video, I will talk about kind of my goals for reading for the new year and also what books I want to read in 2026 and like what new releases I'm anticipating coming out, because there are some really good ones that I'm super excited for. So I'll do that at the end. But first, let's get into all the books that I was gifted for Christmas. I do want to make a quick disclaimer at the beginning of the video that me showing you guys these books is not in any way me trying to brag. I'm very thankful that I got all of these books for Christmas, and books are pretty much the only thing that I asked for on my Christmas list. It was that and like a towel warmer and a bunch of like gel nail polish stuff. So Christmas has become less about getting really fun, exciting things and more about getting things that I would not buy for myself. So, but anyways, enough about that. Let's just get into the books, shall we? Okay, the first book I got for Christmas, Jesse actually gave to me in my stocking. It is Recursion by Blake Crouch. I had heard a lot about this book in 2025, specifically from Haley Pham and Ashlyn Kaylee, I think is her name. They did a video where one of them made the other read it and they really enjoyed it. And it had been on my TBR ever since then because it sounded really interesting. It has to do with memory and time travel. Also, it deals with themes of like grief and loss. I will say I actually already read this book, which is why I kind of know what it's about. This was the second book that I read in January and I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I did put his other book, Dark Matter, on my TBR because I was interested enough in his writing style and the plot of this book to read more of his work. It seems like a lot of his work has to do with memory and like kind of time travel and how we process memory and just our brains in general, how they function, which is something that I am very interested in. So this was definitely right up my alley. And I thought it was nice. There was kind of a little bit of a romance subplot in this book that I thought was sweet, made it sort of have a nice ending. So I definitely enjoyed it. Like I said, gave it 4 stars. And talking about that reminded me that there is one book here that I don't have because I already donated it. and that was a book that I think my parents got me, and that was Conform by Ariel Sullivan. This was my work book club pick for January. One of my coworkers was obsessed with this book as she was reading it and she kept telling everybody about it. So she made it our book club pick because it was her turn to pick. And the way she described it was like the Hunger Games-esque. So I thought that was intriguing. So that was the first book I read in January. And unfortunately, I gave it 1 star. It was really bad, in my opinion, and I feel bad because she really loved it, but it personally was just like one of the most boring books that I've ever read, and there really wasn't much plot happening. There was almost no world building. The map in the beginning of the book was pointless. I just really did not enjoy that book. I was going back and forth on my rating, but I realized like deep in my soul that it gave me a lot of the same feelings that reading Reckless did in the Powerless series, which if you've seen my review of that book, you know how I felt about that. That was also a 1-star book. Basically because it just like was not worth the paper that it was printed on. It was just bad. It was just bad. But I know that that book has been getting quite a bit of buzz recently because it's part of a new publishing group by Jenna Bush Hager, I think. And I heard that it's part of a tri-trilogy, so there's going to be 9 books. I don't know what possessed them to think that this world was worth writing 9 books about, but I wish them all the best in their success. And I hope that my friends continue to enjoy that series because I respectfully am not going to continue. So yeah, that was Conform. And then there's one other book that Jesse got me, and that was Among the Burning Flowers by Samantha Shannon. As you guys know, I have Priory on my shelves right there, you can see, and I've had that for a little while. I bought it in a thrift haul back towards like the end of the summer, and I've really been wanting to read it. I've picked it up a couple times, but the sheer size, I mean, you can see this book is like, what, 1,000 pages, 900 pages? It's just kind of intimidating, honestly. And I actually recently watched a reading vlog where Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride read Among the Burning Flowers, and this is technically a prequel to Priory. And so what she had said in her recommended reading order is that you should read this first and then read Priory, even though obviously Priory came out first. This just came out last year. So I was like, that actually is great, because this book is obviously quite short. So I could read this and sort of get introduced to the characters and the world in more of a low pressure way, because this is not that huge. So I think I'm going to read this first and then read Priory. I actually am really excited to start the series now. And also this book is just so beautiful. Like, have you ever seen a more beautiful cover? This is just freaking gorgeous. I also don't know anything about any of the Priory books. I don't know anything about the world. I truly just want to go in completely blind. I tend to like to do that with fantasy books, just as a rule. I mean, you guys know I pretty much do that with all books, and I think that this book follows 3 different characters in the series. So that is Among the Burning Flowers. So excited to read that. Okay, the next book that I got, and actually, honestly, I'm pretty sure all the rest of these books, with one exception, I was given by my older brother, because he basically just went on Amazon and bought every book that was on there, and that was his gift to me, was all of these books. So the first book was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, and as you can see by the tabs in here, I actually already read this. This was the last book that I read in 2025. Like I said, I was sick for that last week and didn't have much to do. There was only 2 days left in the year, and I was just like in a really bad reading slump, and so I was like, I'm gonna read something quick that seems interesting and like way out of the normal realm of what I would read, and see if that could help me get out of my slump. And it actually did. I really enjoyed this book. As you can see, it's about 4 women who go on an expedition to what's called Area X. It's this part of the earth that has been basically like abandoned, and it's like cut off from the rest of society. They all have different like jobs. There's like a psychologist, there's an anthropologist, a surveyor, and then a biologist, and that is the narrator. They're on like expedition number 11, and the people who have gone on previous expeditions, they tend not to end super well. Either they don't come back at all, or they come back very different versions of themselves. So it's really ominous, and I really enjoyed this book. One thing I will say is that you can really feel this sense of like wrongness, or almost like dread of what is coming from very early on. Just, you know, from the minute they step in here, even before they come to Area X, that something is just not quite right, and you don't really know who is responsible for that feeling. They make some really interesting discoveries, and the way this is written is really interesting. I really liked Vandermeer's style of prose. I thought it was quick to follow, and there is a really interesting subplot within this book as well. I'm not gonna say what it's about, but it does have to do with our main character, the biologist, and a relationship that she has. I found that to be such an interesting kind of side story tied to the main story. The way that it's cut into different parts of the story really kind of catches you by surprise. I will say I only give it 4 stars though. The ending left me wanting a little bit. I liked the very end, but in terms of the sort of big reveal that we get of the thing that they're kind of searching for, which it's weird that I'm saying this, but I think I just wanted it a little bit more based in horror, like even a little bit more gruesome, maybe. I'm not sure, which is weird because normally I don't like to read a lot of horror or like gross things, but I think that the anticipation of what is going to happen versus what actually happens is a little bit off kilter. Like, I think that the payoff could have been a little bit bigger towards the end of the book, but I still really, really enjoyed it. So that was Annihilation, and I also just love the cover art of this book, and I just think it's so cool. Next, I put this book on my list as a recommendation from the book Leo. She always has very like niche, interesting book takes, and this is a book that she really loved. It's called The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and this book won the Nobel Prize in Literature, so clearly it's a wonderful book. And as you can see by my bookmark, I did actually start reading it. I only got about 30 pages in before I kind of pivoted to something else just because I wasn't in the mood for reading this at the time that I picked it up. It is about this English butler who has worked as a butler for a long time, like basically his whole adult life, and you can tell that it really is a part part of his identity and who he is. He's very proud of the work that he does. At this house that he works at, he has only worked under one owner, but then the ownership recently changed to a new guy, and there's some staffing changes. Basically, all of this leads to the new owner recommending that he go on a road trip, like take some time off and just kind of relax and just kind of, take a road trip, see what's out there and travel. And at first he doesn't really want to go. And that's basically what I've read so far. I assume that the rest of the book is about his travels and kind of what those reveal about himself and his identity, who he is personally, but also in his job, like of being a butler. And like I said, it was enjoyable. It just is quite a bit of a different shift in terms of the prose compared to what I've been reading a lot lately. So I had to put it down just to kind of give myself a little bit of space from it. I'm definitely going to pick this back up probably soon. So that was The Remains of the Day. Okay, next on the list is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I'm not going to say one of the most iconic books of, I'm not going to say like, I feel like this is like one of the most iconic books of last decade. Like everybody knows Sally Rooney and everybody I feel like talks about this book in particular. I know that I think this is kind of a romance slash maybe obsession type. I know it's obviously not like a normal contemporary romance, but it's about two characters who I think grew up in the same town together. And I think it's one of those where they've known each other for a long time, but it's like in the future, like in their adult lives, that they sort of come together and have this romance. And I know that this was also, as it says here on the sticker, they made a Hulu series about this, which my best friend watched because she loves Paul Mescal and she said it was amazing. So I told her that I wanted to pick up the book and read it so that I could watch the show. Obviously, I've heard a lot of great things about this, but I've also heard some mixed reviews from people that I generally align with on book opinions. So I am curious to see how I feel about this. And I also know that Sally Rooney is famous for not putting quotation marks of any kind around her dialogue. So I'm probably gonna have a hard time with that, but we will see. I've heard about it enough that I'm ready to read it. Okay, next, this book is a little bit of a departure from my normal reading taste, and believe it or not, is the first book that I have owned from this author, and that is Stephen King's Billy Summers. I do not own any Stephen King books. I've never read any Stephen King books, but I want that to change this year. Like I said, I'm not usually a fan of horror books, but I actually have heard a lot of Stephen King chatter this year, and Allie Goodwin read a couple of Stephen King books this year too. And so it's just kind of putting Stephen King like in my brain that there are a lot of books out there that like I shouldn't put him off just because he writes in a genre that I don't typically read. I mean, he is one of the best writers of this generation. So I know that. I think this is about a hitman. Again, something that I wouldn't really be interested in, but I am curious to read it. There is also a Stephen King book that I really want to read this year as well that I'll talk about in my like year TBR section. But yeah, so that's Billy Summers. And next is another YA fantasy series. I clearly have a thing for like YA fantasy, and I just haven't started a lot of them. I really need that to change this year. That's going to be one of my goals is getting through some of these series. But I did also get the first book in the Prison Healer series by Lynette Noni. If you have been on Book Talk or BookTube for any length of time, you have probably heard about this book. It is extremely popular. It came out just a couple years ago, I think. So it's still pretty new. I've heard a lot of good things about this book, specifically the ending. Apparently there's like a huge plot twist ending. I know nothing about it except for the main character is a prison healer. So I'm very excited to start this eventually. I don't know when. I might have to do like a spin the wheel situation for which fantasy series I start next, because I have truly so many. And speaking of fantasy series, the next 2, maybe 3 books are the first book and more. The next book that my brother gave me was Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. This book I have on my list, again, as a recommendation from Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride. She has talked about this series a lot, and I'm pretty sure the reason I put this on my TBR was because it made it on her book bracket, and so I put it on my list. All I know is that it's about necromancers, and I think it's supposed to be like kind of funny. Like it's actually, doesn't take itself too seriously, which I think could be kind of a breath of fresh air. Kind of seems obvious given that the cover art is this character who has like skull makeup on, but they're also wearing aviators. So definitely seems interesting, and I am intrigued to find out more of what it's about. And again, following the theme of fantasy series, I also got Caraval by Stephanie Garber, the first book in the Caraval series. I'm pretty sure that this is a series. And again, I don't know anything about it other than there is a Caraval, which is like that another word for carnival? I don't really know. I assumed that that was was like a made up word for this book, but I could be wrong. And I really love the cover. I think that's kind of what kind of drew me to it initially, but I've heard a lot of good things about this series. I definitely feel like with how much YA fantasy I've been reading lately, that they are very hit or miss for me. So I do feel like I end up putting a lot of YA fantasy on my TBR because I hear good recommendations about them, but then they don't always end up hitting. So I am curious to see how all of these stack up, if they are good or not. And next, another fantasy book, believe it or not. I was gifted Blood Over Brighthaven by Emma Wong. This also has been all over Book Talk and BookTube lately. Can we appreciate how floppy these pages are? Oh my gosh, I love a floppy page book, so good. I heard about this a lot, obviously in 2025, but I never really picked it up for some reason. And then Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride talked about it, I think in her top 10 books of the year, not 100% sure, but she had raved about how good this book was ever since she read it. And I obviously trust her opinion a lot because I do take a lot of book recommendations from her. So yeah, I finally ended up putting it on my Christmas list. A lot of these books that I put on my list were kind of books that like I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to buy for myself, like new. And so that's what kind of where a lot of this list was inspired from. Books that I was like, I'm not sure if I would, spend 20 bucks on that book, but somebody else could do it for me. So I am very excited to read this. All right, we're almost getting there. We got 3 books left. The next book that I asked for was The Safe Keep by Yael Vanderwooden. I'm sure I butchered that. That's probably not how you pronounce her name. This book also came as a recommendation from the book Leo. She said this is one of her favorite books that she read last year, and it was a finalist for the Booker Prize. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I definitely need to pick this up. I mean, you can see all of the acclaim that this book has. Excited to read this. I think that this is literary fiction, and from what I know about it, the main character has a brother who basically springs on her that his girlfriend is going to come and stay with her for the summer. That really kind of just throws a wrench into her life, and I think it follows like the two of them living together in this shared space and what kind of ensues. It sounds very interesting, and like I said, I've heard a lot of good buzz about this book. I definitely think this will probably be up high on my list for books to read next. Okay, last book that my brother gifted me for Christmas was Culpability by Bruce Holsinger, and I saw this book floating around Goodreads a lot last year. I really was mostly intrigued by the cover. I just think it's such a beautiful cover. It's so interesting. Bruce. Yeah, come on in. I just feel like it's such a beautiful book to look at, and I didn't even realize until I got the physical copy that there's like some distortion happening here, kind of alluding to the themes of the book. And this was also an Oprah's book club pick in 2025. So I really just put this on my list purely because the cover looked interesting. I saw it floating around and thought it was literary fiction. And I did read a little more about it and learned that it's kind of like a family drama, and it involves AI. So I'm definitely intrigued to read it and see kind of what it has to say about AI and like what kind of family drama is going on. I do love books about that kind of stuff, so very interested to read that book. And then lastly, this book I was not gifted for Christmas. I actually bought this at half price the week after New Year, but I still wanted to include it because it's still new to me, and that is Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. I first of all just love this cover, and I am so excited to read another book by Tommy Orange. I actually did not realize that this book came out, I think in 2024. I assumed that this had like just recently came out because I didn't know that Tommy Orange had written another book. But I love There. That was his debut novel. It was wonderful, blew me away, made me cry all over the place. It was so good. So I'm really excited to read it. I don't know, what it's about, but if I could guess, I would assume that he's continuing to explore themes of the Native American experience in probably the US. So I can't wait to read it. I also wonder if it's going to be like multi-POV like There was, because I really enjoyed that aspect of that novel. So I kind of hope that that is included in this novel as well. Okay, well, that was all. That was 14 books. I got 14 books for Christmas, which again, like I said, it's like the only thing that I asked for. So I am very blessed that my family went above and beyond and bought me basically every book that was on my list. Now that I have gone through that list, I kind of in tandem wanted to talk about books that I want to read this year for sure, like books that are on my 2026 TBR that I like absolutely have to read this year, new releases that I'm excited for. And obviously all of these books that I got for Christmas are on my year TBR, but there are some books that have been on my shelf for a little while that I have been wanting to get to. And one of them I actually just started reading about a week ago, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I have heard so much about the Broken Earth trilogy, that this is like one of the best fantasy trilogies of all time. And as you can see by how heavily this bad boy is being annotated, I'm so obsessed with this. I am on page 344, so I'm getting close. I only have about 140 or so pages left, and I'm really excited to see how this wraps up. stuff. So yeah, after I finished like the first couple of books that I read this year, I was looking at my shelf after I had put it together when we moved, and I was like, what do I want to start, like, you know, as my first book that I read in this house, and really kind of one of the first books of the year, like, what do I really want to read the most? And this was up there. I was like, you know what, it's finally time. So on my TBR this year, obviously, is to read this, but to read the whole trilogy. So The Obelisk Gate, I think, is the second book, and then A Stone Sky is the third. So I should probably go out and try to look for those, because I'm going to be done with this one in a couple days, and I am just loving it. That was kind of like the most important one for me this year that I really wanted to get read. And another book that I added to my TBR that I want to read this year is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I know that Brandon Sanderson is like one of the greatest fantasy writers this generation, and his books are very popular. I have never read any Brandon Sanderson novels, but my brother actually has read quite a few of them and really likes to read his books. And I recently watched a video where somebody talked about the Way of Kings series being like one of the best ones to read for Brandon Sanderson. I don't know any of what it's about. I don't know how many books are in the series, but I put that on my TBR for the year because I definitely want to check out his work and see, in terms of fantasy worlds, like how much I might enjoy it. Speaking of Stephen King, another book that I for sure want to read this year, one of few, if one, historical fiction book that he wrote, which is 11/22/63. I know a couple of booktubers who read this book last year and absolutely adored it, and it is a beast of a book. I think it's over 1,000 pages, and it is about the assassination of JFK, and I've been hearing a lot of good things about it, so I definitely want to pick that up and read it this year. Jesse was looking for a show on, I think, HBO Max last night, and there's a miniseries based on the book, so I definitely want to read the book so that we could watch the miniseries together afterwards. So that is for sure on my list. So hopefully I'll read at least 2 Stephen King books this year, maybe more, who knows, maybe I'll love them and I'll read more. And another book that's on my TBR for this year, and is honestly on like a auto buy, like as soon as it comes out, I honestly might pre-order it. Like I want to read it as soon as it comes out, and that is Whistler by Ann Patchett. I read my first Ann Patchett book last year, and that was Tom Lake. Obviously that's like one of her most popular books in the sphere of like booktube and book talk, and I absolutely adored it. I love her writing style, and also the cover of this book is so cute. It's so, like, I want to display it. Obviously I love horses just as like an aesthetic motif, but it's such a beautiful cover. I don't really know what it's about. I'm assuming it's probably, you know, literary fiction style, like about a family, but yeah, that is one book that's like on auto buy. I'm gonna read it as soon as it comes out because I am just really excited. I also want to read more of her backlog too. Need to look into like other books that she's written because I do really enjoy her work, and Tom Lake was the first that I had read, so I want to kind of explore a little bit more of what Ann Patchett has to offer. Another book I want to pick up this year is another fantasy book, probably in a series too. I'm not 100% sure, but that is The Raven Scholar by, I think it's Antonia Hodgson. I have it actually right there next to Priory, but I picked that up at Barnes & Noble in Bellevue, Washington back in November. I'd recently watched a video from Lexi from Newly Nova. She basically said, like, if you read one book this year, let it be The Raven Scholar. It's so good, 10 out of 10, amazing. So I was like, okay, say less. I'm gonna put it on my list. So I went out and bought it. I have a lot of fantasy books on my shelves that I need to read, clearly. And then I think lastly, in terms of books that I absolutely like really want to read in 2026 is Jeanette McCurdy's new book, Half His Age. I know that I think it just recently came out as of like this week or last week, and I read her memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, and that is like one of the best celebrity memoirs I have read. Not that I've read very many, but I really enjoyed it, and I actually really loved her writing style. And now this is her first foray into like fiction books, so I'm really interested to see if I like it or not. It seems like a lot of the themes being explored by the relationship in this book she has probably experienced herself, so I'm interested to see like how her experience kind of comes out in this story and really what it's all about, like what the messaging is. So yeah, I'll probably have to pick that up pretty soon. So yeah, those are all the books that I want to read this year. My goal this year is to read 55 books. My goal last year was to read 50, and I ended up reading 64, so I definitely surpassed that. But I do think there were a handful of books that I really didn't take enough time with, and for, you know, whatever reason, YouTube or otherwise, was just kind of trying to like get through super fast. And so that is kind of one of my goals this year, is that I want to take reading a little bit slower and really sink into it and absorb what I'm reading, and not necessarily focus on like a big picture goal. I really just want to enjoy the process of reading and be able to process it and take it all in. So even though I could easily have made my goal 65 and reached that, I wanted to put it at 55 just to have like no pressure. And there's also a lot of big books that I want to read this year. Big books take me time. Like even this book's like 470 or 80 pages, and I've been reading it for a week and I still have a little bit left. And that's me like using a lot of my extra time to read. It just takes me a while to read. I'm a slow reader, and especially when I'm annotating, it just takes more time. So I actually want to kind of slow down this year and not try to read like a million books, just to enjoy the ones that I am reading and really get a lot out of them. So yeah, so that was it. That was all the books that I got for Christmas and a handful of books that are on my 2026 TBR. I'm really interested to know what books you guys want to read this year. Let me know in the comments if any of these books are on your list or what other books or new releases that you're really excited for in 2026. And also tell me what your reading goal is, because I'm really curious what everybody's goals are. Are we really trying to make moves this year, or are we trying to just be more slow with it, more chill, just like enjoy the process of reading? With all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, leave a like and consider subscribing. And yeah, that's it. See you later. Bye.